So we're trying to introduce your piece to an audience, and I wondered if you wanted to play some selections for us, just
Sure.
guide our listening.
Okay. One thing is it's a good size song.
How long is
it's
it?
about, I would say, it always changes when it gets performed. I would say it's going to be somewhere between 10 and 12 minutes, and usually, composers, I find, always think things are faster than they are because they don't have the physical, it's in their head, and there's not the physical reality of the instruments and the time it takes to really hear things in an acoustic and all that. So I'm guessing it's going to be probably closer to the 12-minute side. And so I tried to really unify it. And one thing that was really interesting for me to go back and look at this poem again was, for one thing, to try to be more sensitive to the structure of the poem. Not be quite just so sort of following each line, but the poem's beautifully organized into two stanzas, or two larger sections that make up the first stanza, and then a longer second stanza, like that. And I really tried to have the form reflected. I'm going to play it. It's easiest for me to play a little bit on the computer, and at the beginning you hear that there's kind of this wintry background. This is all pizzicato on the strings, so it's all plucked, and so it sounds kind of bare and little wintry, especially it sounds the way I wanted it to with the strings. And then the voice comes in with this melody over all this plucking. So it, in that little theme, that da da dee da dee dum, comes back throughout the piece, and particularly at the end of it. But that opening, this kind of bare thing in the second little stanza, which I can find quickly, then gets transformed into something that's a little bit more, and it's the same idea. So this again is like pizzicato, now with the strings kind of whining a little bit, because now this is like a prelude to this man's death. So it sounds, so it's the opening idea transformed a little bit, and then the voice comes in on top of that. So you hear that, and then in the final stanza, which is the night of this man's death, who this is an elegy to, then things are a little bit less still and static, and they begin to flow, and they almost are like sort of flowing toward the afterlife in a way. So that's the basic structure of things. There is a section which I'll show you. It is an elegy, so there's a kind of a natural mournfulness to things, but I tried to create some contrast, and there's a section where he's tending the animals in his farm in Vermont, and it's sort of a barnyard thing. So I almost have a little scherzo in the middle of it. So the words are, spend 5 days laying a ladder for the hens. So I have this little section where it goes da 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 dee da ba ba beep ba beep dee doo doo. So it's spend 5 days laying a ladder. So it's almost like the strings are going wow, things like that, and so there's a kind of a it's like a barnyard basically, and it's got a little bit of a helter-skelter barnyard quality to it. In the middle of this dirge, it's a little respite, from the essential lyrical sadness of it, and then in the second sort of substanza that I mentioned, there's a place where it goes, Nestler, nurse, mender of wounded things, and that also moves a little bit more, and the strings underneath it are almost playing. I have to say, I didn't really do this intentionally, but it ends up sounding almost like a kind of a Latin dance under this. It really has a kind of a roiling, lively quality, and I was trying to be very sensitive to the poem, but also be sensitive to a musical structure. So really what we have are two similar kind of sections followed by this longer section that leads to this, you know, really transformative, really religious moment. And in those first two sections, so that everything didn't have just this, you know, lugubrious quality, that there are these moments of almost comic relief with the hens, and then just this kind of dancey quality. So I feel good about the rise and fall and the structural thing that I was able to effect.